Welcome to the Future AI podcast. AI can be overwhelming, which is to be expected as a radical new technology. But that makes it hard for you to know what really matters, what can help you, and what is just noise you can ignore. That's why I created the Future AI, a podcast, email newsletter, practical courses and guides to help you learn AI the easy way. You can find a link to the Future AI website in the podcast show notes. And I'm the creator of the Future AI, Pranath Fernando. Today, I'm covering part of my free course, Learn How to Use Claude AI. This course is a comprehensive course for beginners that helps you learn how to use Claude AI, a powerful generative AI tool that explores its capabilities, limitations, and best practices for effective use. Teaching you what AI, generative AI, and Claude are, to showing you how to use Claude for personal tasks to work applications. This course provides a practical guide for how to use Claude AI to help you in your work and in your life. And you'll find a link to this course in the podcast show notes. So today we're covering part 5 of this course, how to write better prompts for Claude AI. And in this guide today, we'll be covering going beyond the basics of Claude and specific advanced prompt techniques, including being clear and specific, using examples and analogies, breaking down complex tasks, using constraints and boundaries, using iterative refinement, role assignment, and combining techniques. So let's get started, going beyond the basics of using Claude. So if you've already started using basic prompts for Claude, that's a great step, and you have skills probably less than 98% of people don't yet have. So congratulations. So what's next? You might have discovered that you get varying results using Claude. Sometimes you get great results and sometimes not so great. So is that just bad luck? Well, not exactly. While Claude can't do everything, sometimes the reason you don't get good results, it's not that, but because we didn't ask Claude in the best way. So what's the best way? That's what prompt engineering is all about. AI researchers have studied the best ways to use large language models like Claude and have found 6 key advanced techniques that help get the best results. These are 6 advanced prompt engineering techniques that AI professionals and data scientists used, and I've used them myself in both of those roles. Now I'm going to show you what they are and how you can use them to get the best results. So the first one of these techniques is about being clear and specific. Being clear and specific in your prompts for Claude ensures that Claude understands exactly what you're asking for. This technique involves providing clear, explicit instructions and context to guide Claude's responses accurately. So here's an example. So instead of, for example, asking Claude to write a poem, you could be more specific by asking, write a limerick poem about a cat who loves to play fetch. How it works. By specifying the type of poem and its subject, you help Claude understand the task better and generate a better response aligned with more of what you want. Here's another example. Instead of asking, how do companies grow? You could ask, what strategies do tech startups use in their first year to increase their customer base? How it works. This specific prompt eliminates ambiguity and helps Claude provide a more targeted, useful, and relevant response to what you really need. Number 2, use examples and analogies. Including examples in your prompts helps illustrate the desired output format and style, And this technique really guides Claude responses by providing them a pattern to follow. In a way, it's not that different to how we might teach young children at school. We often use examples and analogies to help children understand new ideas based on things they already understand. So here's the first example of how we might use this technique. So you could ask Claude, for example, describe how photosynthesis works using an analogy like comparing it to bake a cake. How it works. So analogies help simplify complex concepts by relating them to familiar processes, and this helps with understanding. Here's another example. Ask Claude to generate a product description for a smartphone similar to this, and you can give it, this is another example of a prompt template where you can give it a specific example and insert it into this template prompt. How it works. So this technique clarifies the expected format and content of the response, which will lead to more accurate responses and outputs for you. Number 3, break down complex tasks. Breaking down complex tasks into smaller, more manageable steps helps Claude understand and execute more complex tasks effectively. You may find sometimes that you need something done that has several steps or requires certain things to be put together in quite a large sequence of things, and sometimes Claude can struggle to do more complex tasks if you just give it all in one go. And a really effective technique sometimes, if you find Claude is struggling to understand what you mean, is to actually break down what you're doing into smaller tasks and do each one of those in a sequence of successive steps. So here's an example. Ask Claude to first explain the concept of blockchain technology, then discuss its applications in supply chain management. How it works. So by dividing the task into step-by-step instructions, for example, creating separate sentences for each part of the task and then putting them in order, you help Claude provide a more structured and detailed responses, again, that are better aligned with what you really want. Here's another example. Ask Claude to first list the key features of a successful marketing campaign. Then, explain how to implement each feature effectively. How it works. By dividing the task into listing and explaining tasks separately, you guide Claude through a structured response so it does exactly what you want it to do in the way that you want it. 4. Use constraints and boundaries. Setting specific rules or limitations for Claude responses helps control the output format, length, content, and many more other aspects. Here's an example. Ask Claude to list 3 benefits of renewable technology. So how it works. By specifying the exact number of points to list, you constrain Claude's response to provide exactly what you need. Here's another example. Ask Claude to write a 500-word article on the impact of AI on healthcare without using technical jargon. How it works. This technique ensures that Claude's response adheres to very specific requirements that you might have, such as a word count or writing style. 5. Using iterative refinement. Iterative refinement involves progressively adjusting multiple prompts based on previous outputs to fine-tuned results. Now, while this might sound very similar to breaking down complex tasks, it's actually a different technique. So the way I think about the difference between these two techniques is breaking down complex tasks is really good when you know exactly what you want and it's just a lot, and so you get it done by breaking it into smaller tasks. But iterative refinement is a really great technique to use when you don't know exactly what you want. And it's about really being able to start and have a conversation to actually figure out what you want rather than knowing already what you want. And so iterative refinement is a really, really useful brainstorming technique or a way of achieving a certain objective when you don't actually know necessarily what you want before you start. Here's an example. So, initial prompt. Explain the concept of artificial intelligence from which you would get a certain response. Second part, refined prompt. Based on your previous explanation, provide more details on the applications of AI in healthcare. Step 3, further refinement. Prompt. Considering the ethical implications, discuss potential challenges in implementing AI in healthcare settings. How it works. So by refining prompts based on the initial responses, you can guide Claude towards more detailed and focused answers without necessarily knowing where you're going to go when you begin. Here's another example. Initial prompt. Create an outline for a novel set in space. Part 2. Refined prompt. Thanks. Now add character development details for the protagonist in the outline. Part 3. Further refinement prompt. Include potential plot twists that could occur during space exploration. How it works. This approach allows you to explore various narrative elements before settling on a comprehensive outline. And this can be a really great tool also for creative idea development, where you want to be maybe open to certain possibilities more at the start, and then maybe sort of narrow in and focus once you've discovered interesting ideas. This is a really great technique for developing creative ideas as well. 6. Role assignment. Role assignment involves specifying a particular role or expertise for Claude to assume when generating responses. Now you might think, well, why should it make any difference telling Claude to be in a certain role? Surely it kind of knows everything and all that knowledge. Why would playing a certain role make any difference? It actually does. So again, what some of these researchers found is by actually, despite the fact that it knows an incredible amount of knowledge, not all of that expert knowledge is brought to everything asked. But what you can do is, using this role assignment technique, is get it to bring all its expertise on a certain area to bear on a certain task all in one go, in a way that you couldn't do if you didn't get it to assume a role. So it actually really does make a difference in helping Claude, I suppose one way to think about it, get really focused. Think of it a bit like a genius that is a PhD expert in multiple subjects, which is kind of true. And a bit like an absent-minded professor, you sort of ask them a question about physics, and it's like, okay, I need to think about physics. And you might not necessarily get the best answer if you just ask a physics question. But if you say, well, as a physicist, how would you answer this? And you might get a better response. So anyway, let's look at some examples. But this technique can really considerably improve the quality of the responses for specific use cases. Here's an example. Ask Claude, as a travel agent, recommend 3 must-visit destinations in Europe for a family holiday. How it works. By assigning the role of a travel agent, you help Claude provide the best recommendations that are most relevant and practical from a family vacation from all the knowledge it has. Here's another example. Ask Claude, as a financial advisor, explain the benefits and risks of investing in cryptocurrency. How it works. Again, this technique ensures that Claude's response is informed by the best expertise it has, and from the perspective of a financial advisor specifically, providing a more authoritative, focused and expert and nuanced explanation. Combining techniques. So using any one of these 6 advanced techniques alone can really be a significant boost to your prompting results with Claude. But if you really want to take things to the next level to get the absolute best results possible, then think about combining some of these techniques. Here are some examples of how. Example prompt. As an expert financial analyst, summarize the current stock market trends. First, explain the concept of market volatility, then discuss its impact on investment strategies. Methods used. Did you see which methods we used? Clear and specific instructions, role assignment, breaking down complex tasks. So we used 3 different techniques in that prompt. How it works. By combining these techniques, you provide Claude with a clear understanding of the task, the role to assume when it's doing those tasks, and the exact steps to follow. All of that leads to a much more accurate and better response. Here's another example. Ask Claude, as an experienced travel guide, create an itinerary for a 3-day trip to Paris. First, list must-see attractions. Then, suggest dining options near each attraction. Methods used. Did you see? Clear and specific instructions. Role assignment, breaking down complex tasks. How it works. So again, by combining these techniques, you provide Claude with a clear guidance on structuring an itinerary while considering practical details and dining options. Here's another example. Ask Claude, as an experienced chef, design a 3-course meal plan. First, suggest appetizers suitable for summer. Then, propose main courses that pair well with each appetizer. Did you see the methods used? The methods used are clear and specific instructions, role assignment, and again, breaking down complex tasks. So how it works, again, hopefully you can see by combining these techniques, you're providing Claude with clear guidance on structuring the meal plan while considering an expertise and seasonal appropriateness. So, summing up, I hope you've seen that by mastering these advanced prompting techniques and combining them effectively, you can really unlock Claude's full potential and achieve much better results for your specific tasks and projects, and take your skills to the next level. Remember, the key is to experiment, iterate, and refine your prompts based on Claude's responses. Try things out, see what works, and learn from that. With practice and persistence, you'll learn how to craft prompts that give impressive results from Claude. And if you want to see the companion guide that's associated with this episode, you'll find a link in the podcast show notes. So that's it for today's episode, and I will see you in the next one.